to join today for this workshop on the community of practitioners that we want to build with CoFSA. This is the last workshop of a series of mini workshop that we started in April or even before in our first partners workshop in March. So it's really great to have be able to discussing, clarifying this initial vision with you. As this work develops, the idea is that we are able to work more and more as an alliance. And today, it's great to have Thomas Brune and Laureline Simon to facilitate this workshop. So I'm just passing it to Thomas. We prepared it together, like we did also for the series of change workshops. So it's really great to see how we are more and more collaborating and moving forward really as an alliance. So up to you, Thomas. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. Hello, everyone. Good to see you again. And nice way for me to reconnect with you now in live and not through recording. It's an interesting time for me because I just returned from some vacation, and in 2 days I will be going on retreat in the forest for 2 weeks. So it's a nice in-between to reconnect with this emerging alliance. Thomas said it, Laureline and I will be facilitating our 2 hours that we have together, and the 2 hours are dedicated to the topic of community building and the role that community should play in our experience and our hopes in the CoFSA strategy. There are some ideas that UNDP has been developing already, and we just want to collect the experiences and insights that I think every one of us has to give input, feedback, and inspiration to this process. And basically we will have 3 phases of our 2 hours. In the beginning, we would like to start with small breakouts and a little plenary conversation on why we actually feel this is an important topic. Why are we participating in this, and why do we feel community should be essential? The second part, facilitated by Laureline, will be focusing on the what and how, basically the actual substance. And the third part will be a brief checkout. How do we leave? What are key insights that we take from the 2 hours? And in order to provide some input also to our conversation, Laureline, Thomas, and myself, we will provide short impulses before the second breakout sessions, what we have as experiences and as strategy already in mind for this, to kind of have something that we can juggle with and gain some friction around the ideas that are already in the air so far. So those are the 3 phases that we have planned. And before we would move into a proper check-in with everyone, I think it has been a very valuable tradition to start with a moment of contemplation together. And I would like to guide us through a little meditation, and maybe a little bit different to how we have usually been starting. So I'm curious how my meditation practice resonates with all of you. So I invite you, just as always, to just find a comfortable position and just arrive in the here and now, in your body and in your presence in our call here together. You can close your eyes if you want, or leave your eyes open and visually stay connected with each other. Move your awareness just to the sensations of your body in this moment, your connection with the ground below you, or your seat, your experience of breathing, and just allow everything to be that is in this moment. And as you are aware of just the sensations of this moment, maybe you feel a sense of warmth to yourself, of kindness to your being, a sense of love to this miracle of life that you are. Allow this feeling to just appreciate yourself. Maybe you can feel it in your chest. And feel how well you wish this being to be. And when you feel connected to this well-meaning and well-wishing to yourself, let it slowly expand and include the ones that you feel connected with. May all beings that you are connected with be healthy and well, just like yourself. Just let this feeling gradually expand to the people around your place, your home, your country. Include them in this inner awareness. Let it grow until you see the image of the earth as a whole in yourself. Just be aware that you and all of us are part of this living planet in this moment. And share your wishes of benevolence with all of life. And now, when you feel comfortable, just gently open your eyes and see the beings that you're connected with in this call from different places of the earth. Let your eyes wander from person to person. And just stay aware that this is what we are. Living beings from the same planet in different places at the same time. And maybe you can just kind of silently greet each other with your eyes as you feel that connection. Maybe we bring this presence into the next 2 hours with each other. Thank you. And someone of you set an alarm exactly for this time. So, without further ado, I don't want to invite us into a conventional round of introduction here, but I would bring us into brief check-in groups of 3 or 4, and give you, let's say, 7 minutes to briefly connect with each other, get to know each other if you haven't met before, and share why do you feel that community, the topic of today's workshop, should be a key part of CoFSA's strategy. I hope welcome back, everyone. I see quite a few happy faces. It seems you had a nice check-in with each other. I had a few very nice encounters in these 10 minutes. Let's open the space to hear from the different small groups what you have heard, what has inspired you, what did you feel was sort of a center in your conversation. Maybe you want to repeat what you said yourself, but maybe also speak a bit for what you've heard from the others. So let's invite a few voices and then have 10 minutes of just collecting a few impulses on this question. Why do we feel community should be so essential? Whoever feels like starting, go ahead, and then we hear from the different people. Whoever wants to speak.
Yeah, I can start. I felt really, I have to thank you for the guiding of the meditation, because it took me really to very interesting places. And I think COVID had made us connected in a very bad way. Like everyone knows what's going on all parts of the globe. And now in this type of environment, we are connecting in a good way, trying to understand that we are a whole. And I, after the meditation, during the meditation, I got really, really emotional. I started crying really, because I all of a sudden I realized that we are like parts of this planet. And sometimes it's so obvious, but you don't feel it. And looking at the faces was really, really powerful for me. And I think that that's our big challenge, is to find a way to make a step forward, because this connection is already here. But I think we have to make some, I don't know, make some recipe of it, as a cook says.
I could say something a bit. I think my group, we were talking about community and, you know, obviously the benefits of it and what it means in different ways of getting together and networking and support for each other and hearing different stories from different people and encouraging other people to come on board. And then we were talking about consciousness as well. And do we have different perspectives or the same perspective of what we mean by consciousness? I mean, as an individual, from an individual perspective, but also we are connected to everyone else through consciousness, and then to the rest of, you know, nature through consciousness. And there's that, then there's leads to communication. So community in relation to consciousness as well, we were talking a little bit about. I think Simon and Johannes do add bits if anything more you want to. Thank you.
You extended the idea of community into the natural world, which I thought was something we probably all think about, but we need to be reminded of. You want to say more about that, Julia?
Well, only in terms of consciousness, that everything in nature is conscious as we are, and we are nature. So we have to have community because we're all one, really, anyway, as well as being individual human beings. It's sort of two sides of the same coin. And yeah, So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
I think that connects quite nicely to what our group talked about, because we also talked about the idea of individual versus collective consciousness and intelligence, and kind of the notion that if you want to transform an individual mindset, our mindsets are shaped by our relations to others. So developing a community of shared values is very essential to that. Jamie, Thomas, and Alexandra, feel free to expand.
I want to stay silent because I will speak later.
Yeah, maybe I'll just build on a little bit what you were saying. I was with Teresa and with Thomas, and you know, also now it strikes me that it's we are quite many in this group, and even on the list, 70 or so. At the same time, very similar. And so Teresa was saying how she appreciated to bring in strange or new voices, you know. And so that's also something I felt would be potentially helpful to come out of the bubble of, you know, quite converted people talk about consciousness, to reach out to people in organizations or other places around the world that are perhaps a little bit less, you know, introduced to this way of looking, and to bring in, you know, really other type of voices. So, and you know, whatever those, you know, we started to have a conversation around that, but and that brings then, you know, the next step, I think, and what we're going to explore. What is it that you want to do with this community and why? And I think some diversity would be helpful, also from non-practitioners even, that can help us translate into, you know, into real concrete change.
Maybe then I just add a few words on diversity, because that's also something we talked about, how diversity also in community helps to reflect one's own being and transcend existing biases, you know, that may stay that may stay unaware if you're by yourself. So that this transition that Julia mentioned from individual consciousness to collective consciousness, and Jamie spoke about collective intelligence and trusting that emergence, that is something that kind of you stay disconnected from if it stays an individual process. But a community can continuously challenge you to transcend your own mindset and paradigms.
I think exactly that's what we talked about in our group, that although we wish to meet similar minds or hearts here, sometimes the strangers or people that think different are the ones that are going to make us go further in our evolution as beings and as leaders as well. So it's very important to find strangers and to accept strangers and try to feel with them. And sometimes these groups are very much about similar people, but when I looked today, I saw many different people. So we have both categories.
So a few people haven't spoken yet. Before we move to your input, Thomas, I would like to invite you explicitly. Is there something that you feel hasn't been said that needs to be shared about this topic, like why community is so essential?
Thank you, Thomas. What I shared was, like, to me, this is maybe the most important part of this work. I think, especially, sometimes we say our objective is to establish a consciousness as a relevant field of practice. So this is kind of a political objective, and it relates directly to movement building. And to get to build a movement, you need to bring people, you need to develop relationships, personal relationships, and a collective reflection. So that's, I think, the objective for this community space. Also to mention, and I would probably precise that in my presentation, but to mention that this right now we are connecting to build the basis of an institutional alliance, and the community would be a broader circle where people would probably come in more as individuals, and we can discuss, how to invite them, but it will be probably much more open, and and then allows for any diversity all the diversity we need there. Thank you.
Now you've taken the word already, Thomas. I feel like you're already building the transition to your input. Let me still just ask, is there anything, Joshua, Alexandra, Aaron, or Johannes, you haven't spoken yet? Is there anything you still want to add that you feel is essential? Yeah, Joshua.
In our group, interesting questions came up. And it was, for me, like how. And it leads me to think about the strategy of how this really would fit into the thinking of systems change. Because we are still dealing with, when the Alliance will be dealing with institutions like UNDP, these are systems. So for me, yes, we talk about the collective consciousness, but really, how does this happen? I take the example of where I come from, where this new kind of community building, which we are practicing on this platform, is not available. Very few people, because sometimes the narrative is the new normal is online. A greater part of the continents are not connected. Yeah, so, but I think this is really where my contribution was really that food as education, or as the bond between people. Maybe we would be having a dinner or lunch if we were together at this time around this discussion. So there are some practical steps that I am curious to see how they come into our strategy.
I see a very strong smile in your face, Johannes. Maybe you want to add to that? So oops, now we lost you.
We should say on Johannes' behalf, he was in our group along with Julia, that he's having trouble with his Wi-Fi, not unrelated to huge thunderstorms, which he's currently in his farm trying to clear up afterwards. So we should be kind to him.
I see. Okay, so we try to include your contributions in written form, and I know that the rapporteurs are always happy about written contributions, so it definitely doesn't get lost. But yeah, we could see the resonance from your face when Joshua was speaking. So then I would say, Thomas, I think I would invite you at this point. We have heard a little bit why we in the space feel community is so important, and you have already said a few words why you think it's such an essential part. And you do have some notions already what you're planning, and you hope to receive comments, feedback, and inspire the critical discussion, so to speak. So I think you should be able, Eastern Bavaria. That's where my retreat will be. I will stay in the forest without a tent. I hope I will not get hit too badly. So, Thomas, I would invite you to share your screen. I think you want to share these slides with us about the strategy of CoFSA in this respect.
Thank you, Alice, for sharing the slides. Yeah, it's really a very initial vision, very limited, but just to put in context our discussion and stimulate it. So just to remind you how we structure at the moment CoFSA and where does this community space sit. On the right side in blue, a community with a vibrant global community encoded into actions with individual practitioners, with probably also alumni that would come from the learning room, network of partners, even maybe champions. So that's our community space, and we have two main other two spaces. One is the learning room where trainings are carried out. And the other one was breathing, and what we call the breathing and practice room, and which we might split up, might make sense to split up in two. One is about, kind of where the core partners meet to steer the work of the Alliance, and we will launch, the plan is to launch this process in October, September, October, and develop a portfolio of prototypes which can then self-organize around prototyping teams and try to integrate this consciousness work in the projects we are doing. So that just to put into context, where does this fit in the structure of CoFSA? So very briefly, this community space, as I said, is broader than this circle of what probably many of you would become co-partners of this alliance. This is a broader space for inviting most of the people that are interested in work and want to join this community. So what do we want to develop in this space? We want to develop thought leadership on conscious food system, which is a very emergent new idea. Develop and nurture networks of people that can work together, that can even connect in some specific initiatives of their own. So build this network, share the experience and learnings that we have, and grow our collective intelligence or collective understanding of how we can move towards these conscious food systems. And also all the dedicated events, such as, for example, annual conference, summit, which can be at some point, we hope we would have, that could be an opportunity to really meet, as Joshua said, in person and strengthen our connections. So what we concretely, the form that it could take would be a global knowledge management and communication platform with different functionalities such as resources and libraries that we can share in the documents that we feel are relevant for the resources that we feel are relevant for these discussions, be able to chat with each other and have conversations on different subjects, to be able to self-organize also into groups, to hold events such as webinars, to give some news and talk about what's going on in this space and some events, etc. I will leave Alice present us. We have a community active right now in our team within UNDP, our food and agricultural team, and we have reached out to them. Alexandra is here representing them. And they said that there is a platform that, at least in the initial stage, we could adapt to make in a community space. So that would be a cheap solution, an intermediary solution, because we also have a constraint, as we have said, in terms of resources at the moment. So that could be a first step, maybe to use only for these co-partners and so that can strengthen the discussion we are having as co-partners before, in the next phase, opening it maybe in another platform to a broader community of individuals. So up to you, Alice, to present this.
Thank you. Let me just go. There we go. Yeah, so I'm just going to quickly give you a little sort of run through of what that digital platform looks like that we already have, just to give you a flavor of kind of the functionalities and how we could use it for CoFSA. So hopefully you can see right now the multi-stakeholder collaborative action example on your screen. And what we could do on this digital platform is set up a group for CoFSA like this one that you can see. And so what we've got here is, first of all, this kind of group feed where as I scroll down, you can see, you know, everyone can just post here sort of news or updates or interesting content that you want to share for discussion. So that would be one feature that this enables. And then here we've also got the members. So if we use this platform, then we'll all be able to kind of see who's part of the Alliance here. And, you know, you can click on each other and kind of see where everyone's based, what their kind of expertise is in, their contact details, and everyone can reach out to one another and connect in that way. We've also got events here, so we can post, you know, any workshops or webinars we're running, or any other relevant events that partners in the Alliance are putting on. And we've also got a section here for resources. So we can post all the CoFSA key materials like the concept note and other, you know, slide decks from workshops and academic papers, blogs, articles. Yeah, these can all really just sit in one place here for us all to access easily. And we've also got a forum feature where each person can, you know, post a key kind of discussion thread or question that they want to, you know, start that discussion on. So that is some kind of the main functionality of this platform. And like Thomas said, this is, you know, something that's already up and running, as you can see, that we're using in UNDP. And we could just create a dedicated space on here for CoFSA. With the team who already managed this. And yeah, like Thomas said, it's something that we could use kind of in the interim before we have more resources in the Alliance to kind of set up perhaps our own dedicated space. But for now, we could set this up and for it to kind of be ready to use by about September probably. And the team have said, you know, they can accommodate up to about 50 new members on this platform in the coming months. So it's something that we could use for the core partners we have on board at the moment. And then, you know, if we are looking to grow this, you know, beyond that kind of number, then we can see how we can do that when we have additional resources. So I hope that kind of is straightforward and, you know, hopefully being able to see it gives you a flavor of how we could use this and how it might be useful for the Alliance. And I'll stop there and, you know, let us know any questions you have about it, and we can come back to that.
Thank you, Alice. Maybe if you can share again we'll go back to the PowerPoint.
Yeah, sure.
I will mention, so we have a couple of, I will mention a couple of questions that we have. We'll focus this workshop on two main questions, but just to stimulate a bit your thinking, that's kind of question that it's not all for group discussion, but rather that we are holding now. So, for example, what needs a CoFSA community could answer? I've started to already probably to discuss that. What value it can offer to participants? How it can best serve CoFSA purpose and other CoFSA works, such as a breathing and practice room and the learning room. What kind of functionality and activities should it support? What kind of platforms to use for this? What kind of facilitation? Should we go for a fully open platform or with a selection process? Which one? And how to develop this work stream? How to involve broader beneficiaries? What resources do we need? How would you like to be involved? So these are all questions we are sitting with at the moment, and we'll discuss the key ones in a moment, but feel free also to come back to us, especially, for example, if you feel you like to be more involved in this work stream in general beyond this workshop. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Thomas. I see, Jamie, you have a question directly, just to clarify something.
Yeah, I just wonder also what mix you're interested in between communities engaged in food and agriculture systems and communities engaged in consciousness development. Is it both? Is it those at the already kind of at the overlap? Yeah, what are your thoughts?
No, well, it's up for discussion. I think what we need is try to get through the right balance so that we have the conversation that are really useful for CoFSA in terms of building conscious food systems. So I think the idea really is, as you said, to bring together people from different worlds, from the consciousness world, from the food and agriculture world, maybe also from systems change. So yeah, that's what I can say at the moment.
Okay, thanks, Thomas. I suppose that now everybody feels like, okay, this is substance to talk about. I would invite you to have a little bit of patience before we engage in that conversation, because Laureline and I were asked to share a few experiences about community building from our own work context. So kind of on the one hand, we see the strategy, and on the other hand, Laureline and I will invest 5 minutes each to share from how we have been involved in community building already. What are some experiences that we would also like to throw into the conversation? So please hold your attention for another 10, 12 minutes. And Laureline and I will be also sharing a few. I've prepared quickly a few slides this morning. I hope this assists the message that I want to get across. Because I realized in my small group, I didn't really introduce myself so much, but maybe some of you know me already from the prior workshops. So I do that sort of now through the slides that I've prepared. Let me do this now. So the funny thing is that I feel, wait, can you, yeah, now you see it in screen, right? Just to give you a sense, I see Jamie and Joshua, so your faces can give me feedback when I have some questions in between. And Thomas, I can also see you. So I want to summarize a few learnings from how community building was, in my experience, leading the project here at the ISS in the last 6 years. Because similar like you described, Thomas, it was kind of my dearest part of the project, and at the same time it was, I admit, the most challenging part of the project. And hopefully some of these learnings are meaningful to you and to others here. So to give you a sense, our project is really similar in a way, not so specific on food, but more on the broader sustainability community. And exactly like you said, Thomas, there are people more interested in systems change, and on the other hand, people more invested in consciousness change. There are prejudices about each other, and often these don't mingle so easily. Different languages are used, different framings are being used, and so forth. People often also prefer to stay among like-minded people. So our impulse was, we want to create a platform in the interface in between to explore the synergies and to overcome also the barriers. Many of us spoke that these synergies are super needed, and it needs a space where people can really meaningfully relate. And this I briefly included because of your question, Joshua. This to me also makes a lot of sense from my understanding of systems change, because as much as we may be concerned about systems change, the way how I understand complex systems dynamics and emergence is that phenomena in systems are emerging from the dominance of certain relationship patterns. So the more I'm concerned about systems change, the more I need to be concerned about what kind of spaces allow relationship patterns to transform, so that from these change of relationship patterns, different system dynamics may emerge. And we have developed our approach to community, basically, and offered certain kind of spaces. I just want to share a few impressions to give you a sense how this is. Yeah, it's about 60 people meeting for 3 days and engaging in various formats of personal encounter, collective reflection, workshop like work on certain topics, contemplative practice, and going back into the own work context. I don't want to go too deep into that, but just to give you a sense how personal gathering over longer time was a catalyst for our sense of community building. And to a certain extent, that was quite successful for quite some time. And of course, similar like you said, Thomas, the question for us is, what can be the meaning and the depth of community in the digital world, as most of this topic is about a global phenomenon. And we care very much about the whole, but at the same time, community is based on strong relationships. So what we did was we provided a platform, similar like what you sketched, that helps people to see the relations. Everything that I show you now are just a few screenshots from our platform to see relations rather than individual items. It's never about individual people or initiatives, but it's always about how are people and initiatives connected, and how are they practically connecting issues of consciousness and issues of sustainability. It's basically like a compass to this emerging field in various visual forms, because often we are overwhelmed by complexity otherwise, and we feel visual aspects can make that a bit easier, like who can be found where on a certain topic. I don't want to go into too much detail, but to give you a sense, it's a visual access to the whole rather than making every individual in the focus, as we often experience that in other platforms. So the key learnings I want to share here real quickly. The need for community is obvious, and every one of us gives that as a feedback. He says, yeah, I feel super isolated with this intention, and in our field, it's very much about climate change. They say there is no sense of like trust and real relationship and this family feeling, so to speak, among the climate activists. So there is a need for a sense of connectedness, because from that connectedness, a different form of activity can emerge. At the same time, community really requires time and commitment. And I mean, we feel that already with the workshops that you're organizing here. Hosting and participating needs a certain commitment. And my experience is commitment comes also through shared practice, through shared routines. Talking itself might be inspiring, but at the same time, certain routines and practices are what makes people feel connected. And I have been experimenting a lot with doing that online, particularly with Chinese groups during the pandemic in the last 1.5 years. I'm stunned how much is possible, but keeping up shared routines and practices is definitely challenging also online, because we have a fatigue also of online relationships. I just want to mention that often community gets reduced to events, and I think that's really not what community is about, particularly when events still, due to certain incentives, become quite frontal. And the specific challenges I see is transformation that includes consciousness, to me, requires also a possibility to engage with certain vulnerability, and not with us like best in class and I have a solution, but people can relate to each other in the sense of we are learning, we are incomplete, we are vulnerable. We don't know what the answer is. And this kind of learning requires sufficiently safe space and hosts that are equipped to hold those kinds of spaces. Particularly online, that can be quite a challenge, I would say. I don't know how it is for you at UNDP, but I'm working for a government-funded organization, and it's very challenging to include community because it doesn't have any kind of KPIs or metrics how it can be measured. So often it gets deprioritized as soon as funders, whoever that may be, ask you, what have you done? And what were the products? What were the outcomes and so forth? Community is a value in itself, is my conviction. And it must be protected very carefully, also from those who are in charge of the money, so to speak. Otherwise, community gets done by those who have the extra time and free space. You know, it's like care work. If it's just not appreciated sufficiently, it gets deprioritized in professional context. I just want to bring that to your awareness. It will be tough, I think, to hold that space. I think it's crucial to get it explicitly mandated and protected from those who are providing the funding for it. And that's what I also feel, what I like to fight for, so that it doesn't get washed under in the efficiency of other routines. So that's all I wanted to say. Thanks a lot. So Laureline, you're the third in the row. I hope you others can still hold your patience and your wish to engage. Afterwards, we will send you into breakout groups to engage in conversation extensively. Laureline, I'm curious to hear your experience with community.
Yeah, so I'm going to share also my experience both as a community user, I would say, and as a community manager or leader that I've been in the past, to throw up maybe even more complexities or more questions into the mix. And the first one is about, and what I'm going to ask you to think through when I go through this presentation is like your own experiences. Like how does that resonate with your own experiences of either being part of communities or managing communities yourself, which might be the case for some of you. So first of all, I'd like to highlight that there are already a very large number of alliances, networks, and communities in existence today, either in relation to food or mindfulness or alternative non-industrial forms of agriculture, indigenous foodways, depending on how we define conscious food systems. So I couldn't find online anyone that's called Conscious Food Systems Community, but many programs and communities, networks that exist today have pursued similar objectives or have programs that respond to some of what we're trying to do in this alliance. And so there was, for instance, a Sustainable Food Systems Network, the North American Food Systems Network, the Indigenous Food Systems Network, the Regenerative Agriculture Network, Slow Food Communities. I mean, there are a lot. And depending on which element you Google, basically, others come up. And they can be, either international, regional, national, local, and they can take many forms. So if you look only in the digital world, I mean, they can be built on a dedicated website or web platform. They use many of them, like Mighty Networks, Slack, Mobilize, social media, all of them, including LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Clubhouse. And you may already be part of some of them. So as I was preparing for this event, I checked, all the professional networks and communities I'm part of at the moment, and I'm actually part of 13 of them. And I had no idea, like how did I manage to be part of 13, professional networks and communities? And then when I reflected about how do I actually contribute to those, it's not really good. Like I have to say, I mean, there are 2 or 3 that I check regularly. I need specific information or when I want to contact some people, which I think may be in this community, but there is really like only one in which I'm actively contributing. And when I thought about it, it was like, what's specific about this one that I really like? And it's actually the one where I guess there's like so much resources put into managing it. Like they have, we have a super well curated Slack channel. I think they have 5 or 6 facilitators who contribute, around the clock for different content. It's really about, the only purpose of this network is just for people to collaborate and, share the work that they do. So you can just share the work that you're doing. You can ask for help. There is specific information about philanthropy and, calls to get resources. And if people don't answer fast enough, like the facilitator actually nominates the person he thinks could help you in that framework. So that works really well in a way, but it also highlights how much curation work and how much facilitation is required for this to function. And it made me reflect also on the community I was in charge of creating about 2 years ago when I was still working for the UN. And it was called the Resilience Nexus. It was about connecting individuals. So it was thought leaders in the field of sustainability, resilience around the world. And in the beginning, I thought, well, it shouldn't be too hard to create a community. So I got the Slack channel. I reached out to everyone. Everybody was basically very happy to sign in. But then the purpose of that community was really to provide inputs to the work that this initiative was doing. So it was a collective intelligence process, and we were really counted on this digital platform to help us get some inputs to some specific questions. And we were hoping people would be super engaged. And then the hard work started, like 0 engagement, very hard to get people to contribute regularly. And so we ended up having to organize events, like Thomas was suggesting. Like we had to organize events regularly to get answers to our questions, to get inputs on where we needed the inputs to be. So the added value of the digital community was pretty hard to see for our own work as an initiative. But then lots of people told us, well, we really like it because then we can network among one another, which we had no idea about. So it also raises this question about how do you assess, who's benefiting from the community and how it contributes to your work versus the work of the members of the community, which is also a great output in itself. And just going back to this idea of inclusivity or inclusion and diversity, that's something that came up very clearly with our digital community at the UN, is that it was an online platform without a set agenda. We're working in English. And of course, the people who maybe not, may not be using English as their main language, who may be very busy with subsistence or community work, may not have easy internet access, couldn't join, and they didn't. And they were very clear upfront, like that's not the right tool for us to engage, and we won't be able to do it. And so it's something we may want to keep in mind if we want this community to be more inclusive and more diverse than the Alliance in itself. And we may also wonder, why this community should be more inclusive and diverse than the Alliance in its composition. And I'll stop here before going maybe into the question, or Thomas, if we don't have much time, maybe I introduce the questions directly for the breakout groups.
Yes, basically because you're already saying it. We shortened the breakout group by 5 minutes in the meantime because we're a little bit behind on time, so we have 25 minutes in the groups. Thanks a lot, Laureline. That was super interesting.
Thank you, Thomas. Yours too was very interesting. I just want to introduce the few questions that we're going to have for the breakout groups. And so as you reflect on your own experience as a member or as a manager or as a facilitator of a community, it would be great if you could tell us very honestly what the added value of this community space for the Alliance could be, what unmet needs this community would feel. And if you're very honest, what would you like to receive from this community? What would you be willing to contribute? Not just right now, but in the long run, because it's always easy to say, yeah, I can do a lot, but think about your workload and think about your other commitments. So what do you want to get from this community? What do you want to contribute? And if your organization does not need this community, or if you feel other organizations would be interested in joining, share why and how do you think they would contribute if this community is to go beyond the Alliance. And it would also be great if you could let us know what you think would or would not work well for this community of practice. So it can be in terms of selection of members, rules of engagement, platforms used, this mix of in-person and digital engagement opportunities, facilitation, type of digital platform used. So you only have 20 to 25 minutes maximum, I guess, but the more information you can share, the better. And I understand there will be a Google Doc. So if one of you in the group can just take notes while people are sharing, that would be very helpful for Thomas and Alice afterwards. So I'm taking over, right, Thomas, for the discussion. How much time do I have? Because we're a bit behind schedule. So Thomas, or
15, 20 maximum. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I'm just going to invite, as we usually do, like each group to share some of the key points. Maybe we'll start with the first question first about the needs, and then we'll have another round about how do we address this question of what would and would not work once we've talked about the needs. So who wants to go first? We don't have much time. Jamie, do you want to go first? I can nominate you. You are in my group.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So we spent most of our time, I think it's fair to say, on the first of the three questions. And even maybe a kind of question before that, and the kind of assumptions that were in there about whether members of a community really would be interested in connecting with each other, whether and in order for them to do that, they'd have to have a need that was being met. If it's just, we're interested in engaging with them to co-create with the community, to get input and ideas from a community, to have some proposals responded to. There's a way of sort of shared sense making in a larger group that doesn't involve the kind of peer-to-peer social sort of individual connectivity. And so yeah, we talked primarily about that, and the importance. Another part of the need was that those within the system, whether it's in the European Commission or it's in private sector organizations, need to be included sort of upstream in the process. And so there needed to be enfranchisement or buy-in and input from them. And then sort of downstream later on, so that's one type of community, whether it's got peer-to-peer connections or not. And then later on, as a kind of intervention, you could have a kind of community that you decide that, well, the way to shift the system are some training interventions, sure, but a kind of community that creates peer-to-peer connections and tries to shift things in a systems way using a community. So there's a community to create innovation, and there's a community as an intervention that could be innovated, if you see what I mean. That's one of the things we talked about. It was quite rich.
Okay. Maybe we'll go to another group for the needs right now. So in group 1, does anyone want to speak up?
I'll go first as scribe, and then others can join in. But we talked about how the existence of the community itself would be a good thing, because it would prove that there's credibility and a scientific basis to what we're doing. So earlier on, we were talking, weren't we, about whether there are any groups like this already. So that's the first question you should ask. Is there already a group that we could join rather than creating our own? But actually, the fact, Julia, you were saying that the fact that there is a group like this would make it easier to talk to colleagues who wonder what we're up to. Is that a reasonable summary of what you were saying?
Yeah, thanks, Simon. And also credibility from a non-scientific perspective, because if we're sharing experiences, that's from an experiential perspective, and science probably still needs to catch up with this. So, it helps people to come out who, to have listening ears, and that needs a safe space. So what's needed for that is a safe and respectful place to share experiences which may not be normally spoken about.
Thanks, Julia. Can we move to the third group for this question of needs? Sorry, second group. Third group has just spoken for. Second group. So Johannes, Joshua, Thomas.
Julia, you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, speaking from a Catalyst perspective, because we're a network and a community that's quite similar of organizations and individuals. And I think the need is just to be able to facilitate this peer-to-peer connection that people have been talking about, and having oversight of who all is part of the movement, who's engaged, and who could and should be meeting and discussing is just really valuable. So.
Did you make any differences in your discussions between what's already happening in the Alliance and what would happen in a community that would be brought up? I mean, did this apply for the members of the Alliance, or were you thinking of, you know, having those connections with people that maybe other organizations or other people?
I was thinking outside, because if you're in the community space and you have oversight of it, you can think, oh, you know, I did a project with somebody a few years ago who would be very interested in this, and then bringing it over. And also from a Catalyst perspective, there's always, whenever I'm in these spaces, there's always connections that lead to cross-pollination. So.
Great, thank you, Julia. Very quickly, were there any specific points you'd like to bring up? Because we've got some notes also about what would you as people like to receive and offer? Does anyone want to jump in on this one?
Well, I said in the small group that as a chef that worked for 40 years in Brazil, in the Amazon and other places, I think I could offer some cases, some stories about the challenge of mapping the biodiversity and of food and also the questions about colonization, how did it influenced eating habits. So I think I could offer these insights that we had in our programs, the good results and the bad results about the differences. And I think the differences between cultures and geography and all that, it's a big challenge. So maybe there are things that we have in common, doesn't matter where we come from, and there are things that are very, very different. So maybe we should try to organize those two blocks.
Thanks, Teresa. Does someone want to add a different idea to this one, something that was not mentioned? Thomas?
Oh, sorry, I raised the hand. It was not a different, but just to expand on this, because I think a general issue we are facing with this CoFSA concept that is so big is unity in diversity. How we can help, be at the same time one general community, and also foster a lot of probably smaller communities with people that maybe have more common interests or come from a common background. And in this general question, and we have touched that on other workshops, there is also this issue of two different perspectives or two different groups. And maybe I can pass it on to Joshua, who talked about the issue of trust between Global North and Global South. And just wondering, if that could be also a space where, we can foster a bit of reconciliation, or I don't know what is a good word, but, attend this issue from a different perspective, a different mindset.
Yeah, maybe I want to add that from my experience of working with young people over the years, we had this common summer. We had a camp. We have a camp which is Together for a Better World. We've been going on for 20 years in Cameroon. And what we learned is that the issues of race, of colonization, they are better dealt with by young people when they build heart-to-heart connections. They begin to realize that the systems affect everybody on both sides of the coin, maybe differently, but they can foster a pathway. I find that it's easier when people actually work together on an issue in any community, that certain bonds are established which then go into larger spaces. In the group, I talked about training of trainers, because this concept for me could help in building trust. When I notice young people, each time they came to Cameroon for training, sometimes the sending organizations we have follow up and we have reports. There is always that something has changed. They really transformed. And this apathy in the global south about the systems that are created and forced down their throats start to find an alternative outlet. So the issue of building trust can be easy and it can be difficult depending on how we approach it. And most of the time, we only realize that if left alone, young people would come up with solutions, actually incredible the way they think. And this is why I think the futures that the regenerative futures, for me, should actually be encouraged, like guide and direct this kind of constellations where young people, because it's actually them. Sometimes we are so expert and we bring down the best solutions, and then we don't always question why they don't work. Maybe the magic formula is also to allow this to come from bottom, to come from various groups, and not always from the experts. Sometimes some indigenous solutions could be, they are magical for me sometimes, to even realize that they beat science in certain situations where we are building community.
Thanks for that, Joshua. And yeah, maybe because we're running out of time, we will not go into the very last question, but we've got the notes. So I'm confident that there's lots of helpful information there. And I like to finish with this idea of questioning expertise and working with young people and thinking about diversity and inclusion as a concept, but as a way maybe to do things differently in a way that are more impactful. So thanks a lot for your interventions and your contributions to the breakout groups. And I'll give back the word to Thomas for the last section of the workshop.
Thanks, Laureline. Yeah, obviously there's so much that we could deepen at this point. I'm glad that we wrote down the notes in the Google Docs, which I'm sure you will share afterwards, the notes and so forth there, because I felt there was so much depth in our conversation. It was really good. We had so much time in the breakout groups. Yeah, so it is kind of my role now to transition us also into a farewell, so to speak. We have only 10 minutes left together. And I would like to give us the opportunity to just harvest for ourselves and reflect a little bit how these 2 hours were for us and what maybe a key insight was that we gained, maybe from the experience, maybe from some knowledge that was shared. I want to give you just a very brief moment, just in groups of 2, yeah? And I think one of our groups will be 3, but so you have just a little intimate moment with one person that maybe you even don't know each other yet. Yeah, just take the 3 minutes to reflect. What has been the most impactful moment for you? Maybe a moment when you were touched, maybe an insight, whatever comes to your mind. What's the valuable outcome for yourself that you take from these 2 hours together? 3 minutes for you, and then we see each other for a farewell. See.
Hey, Joshua, we're cut off, but we can continue.
Yeah. So welcome everybody. I'm sometimes surprised how deep and meaningful these short connections can be. That was really 3 rich minutes for me with Julia this moment. So we have 5 minutes left, and I want to give the final word at the very end to Thomas and Alice. So a few moments are open for each of us, what you feel wants to be said as a farewell after this brief checkout with one person or two persons. I open it to you, whatever you want to say as farewell to each other at this moment. We don't need everyone to speak, but whoever feels like speaking. Yeah. I'm curious how you leave this meeting, what you want to share. And maybe I can start, because this brief moment with you, Julia, was really a deep takeaway for me. We briefly spoke about my upcoming vision quest, and I take this as a blessing, what you give to me for the next 12 days that are scary a bit to me. Thank you for that.
I had a sense of, it's been coming up now and again, is it's not resolved, but what do we all mean as individuals by consciousness and its relationship to the food and farming system? I think there's a question there, and I pick up that maybe we've got a variety of perspectives and understandings of that, and I'm looking forward to exploring it from its different facets. Thank you.
I just wanted to add that I enjoyed connecting to Joshua. It was a bit of magic because I had him in mind. We connected, and it reminded me of, his words about heart, opening the heart. Some of the words he didn't say, I filled in for myself, but a sense of opening up, having courage, and connecting to others who are not here, and who have very large systemic impact, and a desire to bring them in. And to be brave and be open up as person to person, and then maybe see what grows from there. So that's something that emerged for me very clearly, and thank you, Joshua.
We talked about the deep need of humans for community, and particularly at this time, and part of healing and regeneration is reconnecting, but we also talked about how the internet both facilitates it and it's very challenging over the internet as well, and the initial enthusiasm for connecting is difficult to maintain. And so that was yeah, that's what I took out.
I suggest to leave it at this point and give it to you, Thomas, to bring us to a closing.
Thank you very much to every one of you, to Thomas and Laureline. It's really great to have had you as facilitators. I think it gives a sense of where we are going in this, as we are progressing in this alliance. I really feel if I would have to share, 2 minutes ago, I would have said, and I say it now, that I really feel grateful for every one of you to be part of this. I feel like you're taking the time. That means that's relevant for you. That means that's something that is worth, as dedicated time to, and something that is probably nourishing for you. And to me, it's really energizing to feel this interest and what you're taking from this kind of events. It's very promising. So we are ending. We have had started a bit this series of workshops, as I said, March, April. We are ending this. We'll be doing we'll have a break also in our team during the summer. But we will send with you before moving into this break some. We've had a lot of conversations in all these workshops, so I think it's time for us also to share with you where we are into this reflection and how do we have processed all these inputs so far. Indeed, we didn't have so much time to process this. We feel we have been doing, and would be good for us in the summer to maybe do a pause and reflect a bit more deeply on the next stage. Our sense, our idea is that in September, we'll probably have a general workshops and to present you what we want for the next stage and move to this more intentional space. To people who really want to, with co-partners that really want to commit maybe for 1 year to this process we call the breathing and practice room, where we co-create together this alliance and also take more time also for the personal connections. So we'll come back to you soon on this, giving you the how we have processed this conversation so far, and probably give you a date in September to reconvene and then move from October onwards into a different, deeper process maybe of co-creation. So yeah, thank you all. I'll be probably Alice will come back in August. We'll be a bit here in July, so you can still write us, and we'll see who answers you. But basically, we'll also have a break during the summer, and wish you all a great summer. Thanks.
Thanks so much to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Be well. See you soon.